All right, we are live. I'm not using headphones again today, so y'all will have to let me know if you can hear me okay. If not, I will plug those bad boys in. Actually, we have construction happening outside. I'm going to do that while I'm finding you in the group because I think that'll actually make a difference for the quality of our sound. Hold on one second, y'all. Things I should have thought about before we went live. All right, let me see if I can find you in the group. How are you all doing? How are you enjoying this? I think did we officially hit fall? I think we officially hit fall. Then we have the equinox. I feel like this is such an important conversation. So today I was like, I'm so excited. I was going to start with that. So I'll share my fun excitement and celebration, personal celebration and win, but that's not really what we're talking about today. But today is my 11-year anniversary of living in New York City. So I moved from Los Angeles, where I spent 10 years doing the acting thing, to New York City 11 years ago. So I am celebrating that. Again, that's not what we're going to talk about today. However, the mindset we're going to talk about the mindset that keeps so many business owners from making the money they want. I do think a big part of what supported me to not only move to New York City, but to, in air quotes, make it here, the whole, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere song. I think this mindset does have a lot to do with it. And I started my coaching business a year after I moved I started coaching a year after I moved here. So I've been coaching for about 10 and a half years. I started my coaching business 8.5 years in New York City. And so I think there's really something to be said for, I literally made it in New York City. I have a successful, profitable, multi-six-figure business. We crossed 1.5 million a week or two ago in the last 5.5 years. I moved here when I was single without a job, and I have, obviously created a very successful business. I had a successful job before that. I met my now husband. I moved into my dream apartment. So there's a lot that's happened while I've moved here that I celebrate. And so, again, we're not going to talk about all the ways New York City has schooled me, all the lessons I've learned from New York City, though there are a lot. It is a beautiful and amazing city, the first love of my life. But man, it is definitely a tough city. It has definitely schooled me in many, many ways. But I do want to talk about this mindset because one of the things that I think moving to New York has really had me be curious about is what's the difference between the people who make it and don't make it? And I'm talking, just in terms of success and business and career and finances. Why do some people move here and really struggle and not make money? Why do some people move here and it's like all of their dreams come true? And I think about the same thing in business all the time. It's what I've been obsessed with. It's one of the reasons I became a coach and a business coach. I study success. What is the saying? Success leaves clues. I am so curious and just fascinated by, we are all so capable as human beings. What are the ingredients that allow someone to have success, make the money they want, and someone else, why does someone else struggle? So obviously today's conversation, hey Kayla, nice to have you here, is not going to answer all of the things and be all of the answers for this. And if you're live like Kayla, an hour later, I'm interrupting myself. We do a giveaway every live. If you say hi, let me know you're here. We're giving away one copy to my self-study course, Get Unstuck, Unlock Your Success. It is an oldie but a goodie. It's one of the first programs I ever created. It walks through 5 of the most common mindset blocks that hold entrepreneurs, creators, and coaches back and some tools to shift those. So that is our giveaway today. It feels very applicable to what we're diving into. But bringing it back to what we're going to talk about today, I've just been seen behind the scenes of businesses for 8.5 years. I have coached countless clients to 6 and 7 figures. 30 or 31 of my clients at this point have made 10K months. 16 or 17 have made their first 6 figures. Many of those have gone on to make multiple 6 figures. 3 of my clients have scaled from early stages of business to the $1 million plus mark. Then I've had many clients at the high multi 6-figure point. I'm also friends with and have peers who are making multiple 7 figures, and I've worked with clients up to the 2 million plus mark in business. So I see a lot of kind of what's behind the scenes, what goes into someone making it. And obviously, I'm going to say this again, there is never one thing, there is never one strategy, there's never one mindset. There's a lot of things that come into play, but there is one mindset that I just see as a common thread among all of those entrepreneurs. When I look at all of my clients who are getting great results, and when I look at, what helped me make it. So we're going to talk about exactly what that mindset is, why it holds you back when you don't embrace this. We're going to talk about one thing I promise you every successful business owner is not thinking, and everybody who's further along in their journey is not thinking. I'm going to just share a simple reframe around this, and then how to work around some of the fear and resistance that can come up with this. Kayla, since you're here, you can let me know if you have any thoughts on what it is. I'm so curious if anyone can guess what this is. Well, I'm seeing if we have any guesses. I'm going to share a really brief story here to illustrate what this mindset is, because I think it's actually quite simple, but I know as soon as I share it, you're going to be like, ugh, fuck that shit. I don't, like, I'm out. Peace out, Kim. But I want you to see how it's really applicable. So I shared this in a post on Instagram today. I think I'm sending it, spoiler alert, to my email, if you're on my email list, to my email list on Friday. But when I moved to New York City, I had so many people that were really, really worried for me. They're like, I don't know what you're doing, Kim. Like, of course, you'll be fine. Like, I don't know if this is the right move for you. It is so expensive there. It's so hard to get a place to live. I, at the time, was acting and waiting tables, and even getting a serving job in New York City, you had to have something like 3 to 5 years serving experience in Manhattan to get a good, like, serving job that would actually give you decent tips, which I obviously didn't have because I didn't live here. To get an apartment in New York City, like a small, tiny little studio apartment, you had to prove you made 40 times the rent, which at that time would have been over 6 figures. I would have had to show that I made over 6 figures per year. And so when I moved to New York City, I had no job. So I had no way to prove I made 40 times the rent. And I had all of these things where, people were like, oh, it's going to be pretty much impossible. And they weren't wrong. They weren't crazy. I think we can hear those things. And New York City is expensive. It is challenging. New York City will love on you, but it'll also test you and challenge you and give you lessons like no other. We will save that for another live stream, but the number of lessons New York City has given me is we could write a whole book about it. But I remember when I moved to New York City, I had all of these things in my mind, and I both had a lot of belief, a lot of determination, a lot of grit, a lot of why not me? I can figure these things out. This is not the mindset, but I do think there's a really important mindset for every successful entrepreneur, which is a little bit of that why not me, kind of that watch me. But I think sometimes the watch me mindset is almost more the proving energy, which look, I can have that sometimes as well. But the why not me, I think, is so much more of a self-belief and a resiliency and a grit, and I can go out and make this happen. Not the mindset we're talking about today, but I do think that's really important. But I had all these stories in my head, and so I almost didn't look for an apartment in the area I wanted to live in. I almost, was like, what am I going to do for like a job? I'm able to find a serving job, and I really had to get back into I think this is so much my CEO mindset of this. What I need to do is set my sights on what I actually want, go after that, not take no for an answer, or I will take as many no's as I need to until I get my yes. I'm just going to be unstoppable, I guess is the word. And I remember at the time I talked with one of my really close friends from high school who lived in the neighborhood I wanted to live in. I moved into the West Village when I first moved here, which is a neighborhood in downtown Manhattan. It's really cute. It's just that, and where I live now, I live in Dumbo now in Brooklyn. Those are like my two favorite neighborhoods. So look, I'll be evidence for you. Everything can look like it's not supposed to work out, and you can move to your two favorite neighborhoods, and everything can work out, and you can marry your dream man and have a dream business. I remember my friend said to me, he's like, I think you should just at least look for an apartment, even though, you don't have all the qualifications. I think you should just at least look and go for it and try. He's like, you might just surprise yourself. And it was like, sort of like just that thing I needed to hear to really decide to go full in, all out after what I wanted. And in a day and a half, I landed in JFK. Literally in a day and a half, I got approved for 4 apartments, even though I didn't have a job and I couldn't prove I made 40 times the rent. I will share how I did that in another conversation because that's too much here, but I came very prepared. I had a strategy, y'all. I was determined AF. There was no way I was letting someone not say no to me. So I got approved on 4 apartments, and I found 6 serving jobs at top locations in a week and a half. And I actually had to turn down 5 of them to have the one, and then just pick the one I wanted so that I could make great tips. All things people couldn't tell me that they could have. So this is, again, not the mindset, but I think just like that, why not you, and really going after what you want is so important. And something, I put this in the post that I wrote, but I think this is like a side note, where one of the jobs that I got but ended up not keeping, remember the bartender at the time asked me where I lived, and I had just gotten my apartment in the West Village, and I said, the West Village. And he looked at me and he was just sort of like, oh, you're starting at the top, aren't you? It was just so fascinating. He said it in this way of literally who the fuck do you think you are? Or just watch how much this city is going to chew you up and spit you out. Or just sort of oh, you're a little princess, or you're just so lucky, except for I know exactly how that happened and that I created my own luck. But it was just so fascinating. And my mindset was, why wouldn't I go for and start at the top? Why would I ever decide and not give myself a chance and go after the bottom, or why wouldn't I go after the thing I really want? It was just really interesting, seeing that difference in mindsets there. I think one of the reasons I got to have the apartment I wanted and got to have the jobs I wanted, and then got to build this business and get to have the results I want in my business, and got to marry the man that I wanted. I got to have all of these things, got to live in my dream apartment now, is because I decided to go after what I wanted and gave myself a chance, and not just thought, why not me, but I thought, why wouldn't I go after the thing I want? Why would I go after the thing I don't want? Like, that doesn't even compute in my mind. Anyway, so side, a little bit of backstory there. But the mindset we're going to get to, the mindset that I think makes all the difference for you, and this is what I think keeps so many business owners from making the money they want. I mean, everything we're talking about here, I think a lot of people don't give themselves a chance. I think a lot of people don't look at what they actually want and go after it. I think a lot of people don't back themselves. I think a lot of people don't think, why not me? And just decide. That decision point, when you decide what you want, right? You draw a line in the sand. A decision is not like, let's just see, I'm just going to try. A decision is, I am all in. There's a line in the sand. I am deciding this is mine until I get it, right? I'm showing up until I get it. I decided I was going to get what I wanted. You know, it'd be okay if it hadn't happened, but I was all in. I was like, I almost want to share how I got my apartments, because I will share this. I remember one real estate broker looked at me and she was like, she literally said to me, she's like, who are you? Because I came with a binder, y'all, a binder of reference letters, bank statements. I saved up so much money. I was like, I will pay you a year's rent up front. Like, I was like, there is no way someone's not giving me what I want. Which I'm reflecting to you, because that was because I made a decision. I wasn't just like, I'm going to manifest what I want in New York City. I was like, no, I'm deciding. I'm going to pick what I want and I'm going after it. And I will leave no stone unturned. I will do everything on my part, and then the universe has to meet me halfway, right? And make some of these opportunities present themselves. But that, I think that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. And here's the big kicker. I was willing to look like an idiot. I was willing to be cringe, in air quotes. And this is the thing here. I think the mindset that keeps so many business owners stuck, and so many people from making the money they want and having the success they want, having the relationship they want, having the home they want, having the dream life they want, is there is so much resistance to looking cringe, and people just don't want to be cringe, and they aren't willing to be cringe. And I would just venture a bet for everyone here. Everything you want in your business, in your life, is on the other side of how willing to be cringe you are. I'm going to explain all of that, but that right there, I mean, we just have to think about it. Like, how many of us are like not posting the thing we really want to post on social media? How many of us are not making an offer, or not selling, or not following up, or not saying the thing we really want to a client that would really help change their life in a coaching call? How many of, because we're just worried we're going to be cringe, right? How many of us aren't even like writing the sales page, creating the course, doing the things? We're just so worried it's going to be cringe. We're going to look cringe. People are going to judge us, right? There's such a concern around being cringe, and there's such a ease in judging other people for being cringe. And I think this, like nothing else, will hold you back and get you in your own way. I mean, obviously there's lots of ways you can get in your own way, but I think this is a really key cornerstone to getting in your own way. And if you can look at, where are the places that I'm not willing to be cringe, that it feels like it would be cringe, and this is like one of the reframes I wanted to offer you, and started to see that's actually my opportunity. If I go lean into those things where I think I feel cringe, and if I'm willing to be cringe, everything I want is on the other side of essentially how cringe I'm willing to be. I love money, so I don't like to bet money. I would bet a lot of money it would change the game for many, 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 many people. So I'll just use, because we're talking New York City since it's my anniversary, I just think about how cringe it felt to, first of all, like at the time, all of my like best friends in LA, and like the people I worked with at the bar I was at, all my acting friends, like I just had to look cringe to them, right? I literally was saying, I'm selling all of my stuff. I like did this I came to New York City on vacation. I was like, I need to move here. I want to move here. It was like a month and a half later. I packed up everything, sold everything, and moved here. And everyone's telling me pretty much how hard it's going to be, how crazy I am. Like, they love me. It wasn't like in a mean way, but I had to be so willing. Like, I didn't know all this was going to happen. I didn't know I was going to find apartments. I didn't know I was going to get a job. Yes, I had decided, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I decided to start in advertising, which is what I first started to do, I didn't know that was going to work out for me. I didn't know that when I started my business, I was like going to work out for me. I didn't know I was going to meet my husband. I didn't know it. This is what I know today, 11 years later. 11 years ago, I had none of that. I did not know any of that was going to happen. And I was basically like, yeah, I'm just so willing to go and fall on my face in one of the toughest, hardest, most expensive cities in the world. I had to be so willing to look cringe. And look, I did look cringe for a while. Go getting those apartments. I mean, I had to be so willing to be cringe and be like, yes, I'm going to be the person who's like, I don't have any of the requirements you're asking for. And there are hundreds of applicants and I want you to pick me. And here are all the things I'm willing to do to be like, to negotiate, to be cringe so that I can get what I want. When I applied for jobs where I didn't have the requirements for those jobs, like I literally didn't have the requirements to even apply for the job. And some of these jobs, I went then to like open calls, or I like found like emails for people who own the restaurant. Like I had to like find a workaround so they would even consider me. One of the places I got hired, I actually offered to work a free shift to show them how good I was, because at the time serving, like I knew one thing for sure: I could sell my face off and I could outserve pretty much anyone, even if I didn't have Manhattan experience. Do you know, I remember sitting at a bar, like, you want to talk about cringe, and like with an owner of the bar where I basically went in, they didn't even have job openings, to make this offer, and like how kind of like cringe that can feel. But I had to be so willing to be cringe, and like that's why I got those opportunities. It's not because like I was so lucky or there were so many opportunities. There weren't a lot. Like most places wanted to slam their what's it called, door in my face. I had so many interviews. Oh my gosh, when I stopped acting. Acting, we could talk about being cringe, but when I stopped acting and moved into advertising, I took 40 coffee meetings. I broke into the advertising industry. And I remember some of the, like, I wanted to get in the door at a really great place. And some of the emails I sent and meetings I set up, right? These are people I don't know. You want to talk about cringe? And you want to just, like, some of the things people said to me and how uncomfortable I just, like, had to be. I literally had one interview, this is like a side note, but I think this is just like helpful to hear sometimes, where my apartment at the time this was in New York City, the one that I worked so hard to get, the ceiling caved in because the apartment above, their sewage had backed up, and literally I came home from this interview and my entire ceiling had fallen into my bathroom. So I had a hole the size of a bathroom in my ceiling, not a tiny one, like a huge one. But I didn't know that was happening. So at the time, getting ready for this interview, and water was dripping on my hair that I just blown out. It was literally shit water. Literally sewage shit water. You want to talk about cringe? That I had to go to an interview and basically go sell my face off. And so I'm sharing this, like, not to say that everything has to be so hard, but I just had to be so willing to be cringe. And that's why I was able to get the things I wanted. If I go back to my acting days, the first acting scene I ever did, I cannot even tell you how cringe it was. If I think about my first coaching session in coach training that I ever did, I cannot tell you how cringe I felt, and honestly how cringe it was. The first time I had a sales conversation, cringe. Cringe, 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 cringe. If I even look at some of the content I wrote a couple of years ago, which at the time I probably thought was good, but I've just grown and evolved a lot, it feels cringe. I started learning Reels earlier this year, cringe. And so I just want to reflect here that your willingness to be cringe is really the thing that's going to get you what you want. But most of us stop the moment we feel, not even when we feel cringe, but most of us stop before we even allow ourselves to feel that cringe, because we're so scared of what cringe means. And I think this is important to speak about. I'm going to share what I have just found to be true about this, but I think it's important to normalize. Look, as humans, we are wired to want to connect and to be a part of a community, a tribe. It is part of our evolutionary, or the part of the ways we've evolved as a way to create safety, right? Way back in hunter-gatherer days, we were safer if we were part of a community, if we were a part of a tribe, right? If we were ostracized, if we were like a solo and alone, we were so much more likely to get eaten by a tiger or a bear, or whatever that was. So we have really evolved to want to fit in, to want to connect. And so I think it's really important to not make yourself wrong when we look at things that don't even feel cringe because we haven't done them yet, but kick up the even possibility that it could feel cringe, or that someone would think it's cringe, and why that makes so many of us stop. I think we have to see, well, of course, because if we feel cringe, if we're doing something that's cringe, if other people think what we're doing is cringe, if people are looking at us and judging us, right, that makes us feel like we are separate from and not literally not safe. And so if I'm saying all of this where it's like, yes, like go be cringe. Cringe is like the secret to getting results. And I also want to normalize, of course, for myself included, it's not like in our nervous system, we're like, yes, I want to run at being cringe. Yes, this feels good. No, it kicks up. And I think for depending on our psychological makeup, depending on our history, depending on different traumas, depending on different experiences, right? This can feel varying degrees of, oh hell fuck no, right? Or just like kick up really that fear response in the body. So I think it's important to normalize that. But I think the more we can start to see how safe we actually are, and see that no one, if you do something that's cringe, nothing bad can actually happen to you. I often, when with clients with anything that we have a fear around, I think what we spend so much time doing as business owners is we try to find ways to make sure the thing that feels scary never happens, right? I think this like kind of makes sense where it's like, I'm so scared of going broke, so I want to make sure that never happens. I'm so scared of doing something and looking cringe. I want to make sure, how do I make sure I'm not cringe? How do I make sure this bad thing doesn't happen? How do I make sure I never have a bad month in business? How do I make sure my next masterclass doesn't flop? How do I make sure this reel is that people don't hate me for it, whatever that is, right? We spend a lot of time and energy around whatever the thing is that's kicking up fear or resistance, trying to figure out how do I make sure this doesn't happen. Hopefully that lands for you. What I think is challenging with that is then we're never actually navigating or managing the fear. We're just spending a lot of time and energy trying to make something not happen, as opposed to moving towards the very thing that is going to get you the results you want. If we can believe my premise here that everything you want in business and in life is on the other side of how willing to be cringe you are, doesn't mean you even always actually are cringe, but just that willingness to be cringe, right? That willingness to feel that cringe or to have something kind of look cringe. If we believe that premise, then we believe everything you want, right, that is on the other side of that. If we're trying to make sure you never feel that, what we're saying is, I want to make sure I also avoid what's on the other side of that, which is everything I want, right? It's the success, it's the clients, it's the money, it's the dream home, it's the dream vacation, it's the dream car, it's the dream, whatever that thing is for you on the other side, right? And so we can see how this is kind of a challenging or not the most effective way to move forward. Yes, maybe this will make you feel safe, and you know, that's obviously important, but if we're looking at creating really big success, spending a lot of time and energy on how to feel safe and essentially play small and avoid something happening that is also the catalyst to avoiding the good things you want to have happen, right? It tends to keep us really stuck. Let me know if this is making sense. So what I find is when we have these fears, which are normal, you are a human with a human brain, right? I don't know that anyone is like, yes, I want to feel cringe. Yes, I love it. I love when people judge me. I love when I fall on my face. I love when I fail. I think you learn how to reframe them and how to see these things to mean something different. Remember when I moved to New York City, I had lots of experience being cringe between moving to LA and acting and waiting tables there and getting rejected over and over again as an actress, being really uncomfortable on movie sets, right? I had lots of experience with that, so it was easier for me, but it's not like that's a comfortable feeling. It's not like I'm like, yes, this is what I want. Right, so we have to see, like, let's normalize that and not make any of ourselves wrong, because I think that more than anything, right now we're adding on top of the fear, we're making ourselves wrong, which means we spend all of our time trying to solve these things over here instead of doing the things that get you closer to the results you want. And so what I find can be helpful, and the way I think about this and the way I support clients through this often, is looking at, instead of how do you avoid ever feeling cringe, instead of how do you avoid ever failing, Kayla says, love the story and mindset. Can't wait to meet and work with you. It's all about going against the grain and being willing to be different and not care, truly going for it. That's what you did, and look at you now. So inspiring. Oh, I love you for that. I cannot wait to work with you as well. But thank you for that. Yeah, and I think the thing here I'd say, Kayla, is like, and I do care. Like, if this is helpful for everyone to hear, it probably seems like, you know, going against the grain, like I had like a fuck it mentality. I have so much trauma with a capital T that my coach at one point was like, you're lucky you're not an alcoholic. And I mean, I don't even drink. But I have, one of my many traumas is that I got bullied for good things happening to me, and like in a pretty big, dramatic, yucky, ugly way, and so I have just as much brain trash as everyone else. I care deeply. One of the things I'm always overcoming is, what are people thinking about me? Do people hate me? Are people going to come after me? And so I say that just to normalize. It's not like I don't have these things or the fears that all of us do. I would say I've had to work through a lot of anxiety. I would say, if anything, I have just as much, if not more, as other people. I've just really learned how to work with my thoughts and work with my brain, and to not let those thoughts and fears and emotions create my narrative and steer the ship, or make that mean anything about what I get to go after and what I get to have. And so, kind of bringing us back to cringe here, and the mindset that I think is maybe just a different way to think about this. One of the things I work on, and as someone with anxiety, as someone with trauma, as someone with fears like anybody else, I really like to think, instead of how do I avoid this bad, scary thing from happening, I like to think more about, what if this big, bad, scary thing did happen? Would I be able to handle it? And I find that creates so much safety in my nervous system. When I moved to New York City, again, I had I had a really good life in LA. I had a beautiful home in the Hollywood Hills. I sold my Audi TT. I had a good gig. I was booking some acting jobs. I had a whole network of friends and family. It wasn't like I left there because I hated LA. And I remember this is helpful to hear, the first apartment I looked at in New York City, I had this moment of what the fuck did I just do? It was super expensive. It was a tiny shoebox. It was in a not great neighborhood. There were rats on the street outside. There were no closets. It was all the things. And I walked out and I just started sobbing. I was like, what have I done? And I say all that to say, it's not like I knew all these things were going to work out. But before I got on the plane, before I sold all my shit, before I moved out here, right when I were on the plane back, one of the things I thought about is, okay, so if I move here and if I feel super cringe and I don't find an apartment and I don't find a job and things don't work out and I have to move back, or I have to live on someone's sofa for a little while, if things don't work out and it's cringe upon cringe, would I be okay? And what would I do? And I just had to go through that process where I was yeah, it would suck. It would feel the ultimate cringe, right? I have a lot of pride. I don't necessarily want to live on someone's sofa, but I would figure it out. I would actually be okay. And the worst of the worst of the worst is I would have lost a little bit of money. I would have been just kind of uncomfortable. I would have felt cringe and a little stupid. And I then would have figured it out and probably saved up some money and just moved back, right? It would have all been okay. That right there is what neutralized my fear. It's not like I still didn't have fear. It's not like I still didn't feel cringe. But instead of trying to figure out how do I make sure that doesn't happen, I couldn't, right? I could do lots of things to prepare, but the best way I could make sure that didn't happen wasn't by obsessing over the fear. And it definitely wasn't by making sure I don't do things that make me look cringe. The best way I could actually ensure none of that happened was by deciding I get to look at what I want. Kind of start at the top, so to say, decide it gets to be mine, and decide I'm willing to feel that fear and do it anyway. I'm willing to feel cringe. I'm willing to feel all of that because I know what I want is on the other side. And so I can handle if it doesn't happen. I'm willing to do that because that's the best way I actually make sure that the scary thing never happened. But to be able to do that, I first had to walk through those steps of, okay, but what if the scary cringe thing does happen? Would I be okay? And this is the same thing I coach clients through, and the same thing I have to walk through now. When I started posting reels earlier this year, in some ways I would say it was almost not harder, but I think it's interesting when you have a certain level of success. And I've created a very successful Facebook group, and things are working. My content works. And then to pivot, I pivoted to, obviously I still love y'all and hang out here, but we started focusing on Instagram kind of at the beginning of this year, whereas before I just kind of copied things over. And I think there's also something, I don't know if humbling is the right word, but sort of where I'm going to be a beginner. I'm going to start over, even though I'm, I guess at that point, about 8 years into business and an expert in air quotes and successful in air quotes, right? And so I think it was a whole different level of now I have to be willing to be cringe with thousands of people watching me, right? It's one thing being cringe when there's 13 people in your Facebook group and half of them are your family and friends, or all of them are your family and friends. I think my first 13 people in my Facebook group probably were literally that, right? That's one thing. And okay, that's one level of cringe. It's another level when you're I'm willing just to get out in front of thousands and thousands of people who have seen me do an air quote good job over here. And I'm just willing to be cringe and maybe fall on my face and maybe look awkward or not know what I'm doing. And I had to go through the same thing. I had to go through okay, well, that's kind of an uncomfortable feeling. That kicks up a little bit of fear. That probably kicks up some of my stuff, right? And can I go through, and so what if that actually happens? So what if I do this and it is a little cringe? And look, some of my first reels, they weren't horrible. I'm not hating on myself, but I don't know, I would say even some of them still can feel a little cringe. Some of the things I say still, I'm like, have I gone too far? Right? I just had to go through that process of like, and if this is cringe, or if people judge me for this, or if people don't like this, or if I lose followers, or whatever all of that fear was around the cringe piece, could I handle it? Could I like what is the actual worst thing that I'm scared is going to happen? Like, let me unwind that tape. Like, how bad could it actually get? Okay, so I lose some followers. I have some people who don't like my content. I mean, that's even if the algorithm pushes it out in front of people. Like, how far can I go with this? And then would I be able to handle it? Not would that be okay? Not would I like that? Not do I want that? But just could I handle that? And what would I do? And when I unwound that, I was like, oh, like it actually wouldn't be that bad. I can handle it. And as soon as I saw I could handle it, right then, my job is not how do I now figure out how to master this new skill set without looking cringe so that this never happens, right? That is where we get ourselves stuck. When we do all of this work to try to figure out how to know the answers in advance, how to look perfect in advance, how to make sure we don't look cringe, how to make sure we don't get rejected, how to make sure we don't have failure, how to make sure we don't fall on our face, how to make sure we don't look stupid. When we spend all of our time trying to do that, it is very, 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 very hard to ever move forward in your business because all of your time is spent on trying to prevent something from happening instead of, I'm probably going to have all of those things happen if I'm deciding I want this thing and what's on the other side of it is worth it enough that I'm going to run at this thing. How can I be willing to allow all of those cringe things to happen? Because the quicker and faster I run at that and feel that, and know that I can handle it and I can be okay, the faster I get to my results. Is that tracking? Is that making sense? So that's maybe it sounds a little counterintuitive, but that really, I just see so, and the reason I'm like bringing this up today is obviously the New York City piece like spurred all of that for me and the anniversary here, but I just see how many times this just has people really get in their own way or hold them back from the results they want. And when I look at the people who are, when you look at someone online, you're like, I don't understand why they're making so much money, how they have so much success. And I know everybody at some point has done this, right? When you're like, my product is better, my service is better. I'm actually like, I know more than them. I have more experience than them, right? How come they're making so much? I would guarantee one of the reasons is not because they have more talent. It's not because they're better or more worthy in air quotes. It's because they're so willing to be cringe and to do those cringe things. And they run at that over and over and over again. And that just brings them closer to their results faster and faster. Kayla says, yes. Thank you, Kayla. Okay, I want to be mindful of time here. I think y'all get what we're talking about here. What I would just, I want to offer one thing and just another mindset here that comes up for me. But the other thing here that I will just remind you is when you have this kind of a mindset too, when you're willing to be cringe, that's also what gets you into momentum, right? We have to like, part of what creates results is momentum, right? When we're building momentum, right, that is just like, that's the place we're always working for in business because that's what creates results. And so we have to think about how often when we're scared of being cringe and being judged, essentially what we're saying, how much we just halt our momentum, and how when we can be willing to be cringe and do the cringe things, how that builds momentum, not only because you're saying, I'm going to run at my results, I'm going to run at taking action, I'm going to run at usually the very things, right? Usually the more cringe, the more of an opportunity there is to get closer to what you want. But when you're willing to be cringe, when you're running at those things, you also just, you cut down, like this is where quantum leaps happen. You cut down your learning curve and your timeline exponentially because we'll just use Reels as an example. The more willing I am to run at those and to be cringe, the quicker and faster I learned. The more I'm in execution, really playing full out in that way, right? The quicker I get data and feedback, the quicker I'm able to look at that feedback, the quicker I'm able to make adjustments, and the quicker I'm able to move on from that. And most people will never even know or see the cringe things that you do, but the quicker you run at those, right? It's just the quicker you're in that learning curve, and that is what will not only build momentum, but speed up your results. For so many people, it just takes so long to even get to the place where they have enough data and information to look at, to learn from, to see what to refine, and enough iterations and enough action points to build that momentum, because they're so scared of being cringe or being wrong or looking silly or bad, or whatever word we want to use there. So we want you to see how this is also what really gets you into that momentum and helps blow up those results. Last thing I want to close here, and this is just something that I have just seen to be true, and I think it is so helpful to remember. I need to sip on my coffee there. There is no one you look up to online or offline. There is no one who is successful. There is no one who is, in air quotes, further along than you that would ever judge you for being cringe or judge you for any way you put yourself out there. The only people who have that kind of judgment, who frankly have the time to judge in that way, there's no one who's more successful than you. This is something I always remember, who even has the time to look at our stuff and think, oh my gosh, that's so cringe. But no one further along than you or more successful than you will ever think that, because they've been in the arena themselves, being willing to be cringe over and over and over again. They're more likely, if they even have the time to take a look, right? If they're going to judge, they're more likely to be like, oh yeah, you get it. You go after that. Like, they're more likely to high five you, or more likely to be like, I am so effing proud of you for being willing to do that. Like, you stick with it. You just wait. I think about this in, at the gym all of the time. Y'all know, like, I love my spin. And when I started spin, I was kind of okay. And now I'm quite good, and I could do like a lot of fun, fancy tricks. I never, when someone new comes into spin, look at them and like they're having a hard time going fast, or they're having a hard time with like some of the dance moves on the mic. I never look at them and I'm never like, oh gosh, you're so cringe. I'm always like, yes, like, I'm so glad you're doing this. Like, yes, like, go. And like, I hope you stick with this, because just you wait, it's about to get so good for you, right? That's my mindset. And I just started doing weight training to build muscle recently, and I am a cringe in my weight training class, y'all. I might be good to spin, but I am cringe in that class. And this is a class of like people who are like serious about it, have been doing it way longer than me. But what makes it easier for me is I don't worry about looking cringe, because I know on the other side of that are the muscles that I want. But I also know there's no one in that class who's lifting heavier weight easier than me that's going to look at me and be like, oh, that's so cringe. They're all like, yeah, I remember when I had a hard time with this. I remember when I started. They're all thinking, get it, girl, right? And if not, then like, who really cares? But I think we really want to remember that. And so if you're worried about people thinking you're cringe, I really want you to remember there is no one who is in the arena. There is no one who's in the arena who has success or is further along that will judge you for that. They are just going to applaud you for that. It is only people who are judging from the cheap seats. Is that Brene Brown's quote? Like, the people judging from the cheap seats and who aren't in the arena. It is only the people judging from the cheap seats who don't have the willingness to do the cringe thing, post the cringe content, start the cringe business, right? Put out the cringe sales post, get on the bike in the spin class, lift the heavy weight, and realize that they struggle with it, right? There is no one who is doing that, who is in the arena, who's going to judge you for it, because they've all been willing to be cringe, and they've all been cringe over and over and over again to get where they're at. It is, I will say this again, it is only people who are judging from the cheap seats, who are not in the arena, and with so much love. To me, that is the only cringe thing that there is. The only cringe I would ever think and see, and look, I don't like to judge people, and I always like to have empathy and understand where people are coming from, and just the amount of fear it takes to put yourself in the arena. But if I were going to say what is cringe, the only cringe place I see is, I think it would just be so far more cringe to not try. So much more oh my gosh, can I say words? I think it's so much more cringe to be the person who doesn't try, to be the person who 10 years later has just judged a bunch of people and never been willing to give yourself a chance, or the person who is never willing to look at the thing you actually want and to go after it and to be all in, right? If like, and then to regret that, like, that to me is the only cringe thing. The only cringe I ever want to avoid is that kind of regret. So I have said the word cringe way too many times in one live stream, but I hope this is valuable for you. I hope this helps you to see that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things that keep us stuck and from making money, but not because of the fear themselves, but because of the amount of work and effort and time and brain space we allocate towards trying to solve a fear that can't be solved, from trying to avoid a fear, from trying to figure out how to not have a fear happen. That is why fears keep us really stuck and prevent us from making money. When we can look at a fear instead and see, I can't solve this. Fears can't be fixed. This isn't something that I can figure out how to make sure never happens. Or the only way to make sure this never happens is just essentially to not try, and that is failing by default. That is being cringe by default, what we just talked about. The win for me is always, how can I look at this fear of being cringe, of being rejected, of failing, of not getting what I want, of, oh my gosh, not getting the thing and having to live on someone's sofa, or having to pick up a second job, or looking stupid, or having people laugh at me, or whatever the thing is. How can I create some safety around what if that actually happens? Not how do I make sure that never happens as the only way I can ever be safe. As long as we're trying to make sure something doesn't happen as the only way we can ever be safe, that will limit your revenue in business. I think I'm not trying to create mean, scary stories. It just will limit your potential to grow and scale. The more you can make friends with the scary thing can happen, and to see the scary things actually aren't so scary, right? Feeling cringe or looking cringe. Like, that's the other thing I like to look at. I'm like, I am a speck of importance if we look at the whole world. If I like zoom out from space, right? You know what I mean? Like these things are so like non-important, but seem so important to us, like, but on a macro level aren't on a micro level on any given day. There are like real things happening in this world that are important, and there are, like, what I do in my business is not solving these world crises or diseases or anything like that. Like, nothing is so important or such an emergency, and I really like to have that context and that frame, and to remember, like, some of these things are micro to us. They feel so important. Macro, like, they, not to say that what we do doesn't matter, but like, they just have so little bearing of importance. And I always like to think about as well, 5 years from now, how much will this thing matter if I felt cringe? How much will this really matter if I didn't get the result I wanted? How much of an impact will it really have on my life? Or I think about this a lot. I think about, at the end of my life, what am I will I have a regret for not doing this thing or for doing this thing? And I think when we can start to have some context around that, and to see our work is not how do we make sure the cringy, scary, uncomfortable thing never happens. It's to see how can we see, like, either to minimize the level of importance and impact it really has, or to see, even if this happens, how minimize that importance and impact would have, and how you'd be able to handle it and figure it out and be okay. That, to you, is your superpower. If you can find that spot and lean into that, and then take those actions quicker and faster, and not from a burnout place, but like from that place, like leaning into the fear, leaning into the cringe, and remembering it is worth it because everything you want is on the other side. And all of your growth opportunities and learning opportunities are through taking those cringe actions, doing those things, because you're going to get that data, that feedback so much faster. When you can see that, I really think that's what makes you unstoppable. And that is the difference between, someone who has a bunch of talent but is struggling to make money, and someone who has, the same talent but is really getting the results they want. It is this part here. And I think it's also important for all of us to remember, and that is not something to minimize either, right? We over-glorify, I think in business, we over-glorify talent, and we minimize what it takes for someone to put themselves out there, to market, to sell, to do the cringe things, to be a CEO, to run a business. That is a talent and a skill set of its own. And I think sometimes that's, equally as challenging or hard or uncomfortable. And I think we have such a desire to minimize that because it's the thing we're uncomfortable to lean into, right? And so then we want to over glorify the talent side. This is the last nugget I'll leave here, but I thought about this acting quite a bit. We always, as actors, like, it was just like, we wanted to like over glorify our craft and like how good an actor or actress we were, and then like hate on the business side, and almost like hate on actors who, like, in air quotes, didn't have as much talent, but were like on a TV show. And I really worked to not buy into that narrative, and to really see as how important both those skill sets were, and that it was a talent to be a working actor because it meant you were running a small business, and it meant that that person didn't just have acting skills, but they also had the skill set to know how to book a job, get a job, show up to set. Like, this is not worth talking about in this conversation, but there's so much that goes into that side of being a working actor that frankly most actors weren't willing to lean into or to learn. And so it just felt more comfortable to over glorify the craft of acting and to minimize or to make wrong or bad the business side of acting. But that's just because they didn't want to have to do it or learn it because it felt uncomfortable, scary, or cringe. But both of those pieces were really necessary. And I think the same is true for us as business owners. And just something I want to offer there as a final reflection. And so just notice, where are the things that we resist? What we resist persists. Where are the things, what are the things we think are cringe or wrong or bad? Those generally are the biggest opportunities for us. So I hope that is valuable for you. I hope that is helpful for you. I hope that gives you a different perspective, maybe some normalization, maybe some permission. I hope to see all of you look at the top for what you want, to give yourself a chance to go after that. And with that, to really look at what are those cringe things. How can you be willing to run after, to lean into what is cringe, to set yourself up for success, to speed up that momentum, to speed up your results. And remember, being willing to be cringe doesn't even mean you always are cringe. The only people you're going to be cringe to are usually the people whose opinions, they don't matter, but they don't matter for your results. That's for sure, for sure. And your own opinion. And so if you can stop seeing things as cringe, right, then you've got nothing to worry about there. I love you all so much. Oh my gosh, I should say this as well. We did fill the coaching spots I opened up, but if you're interested in working together, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I could use some support learning how to work through my fears, work through my mindset, like both get clear on and go after the top and really back myself to like draw that line in the sand to decide to go after that, but also to work through the fears that come up and to be willing to be cringe. And don't mind the background noise in New York City. They're literally doing construction outside my window right now. But if that's something where like I could really use support on that mindset side, like what I'm hearing here just helps me to see the opportunity I have to learn how to think and show up like a CEO. And you also want support on the strategy side of business. I really think both are important. And so I'm talking here about mindset, but even when I talked about that apartment example, I had a strategy that I executed on, right? We need both. So if you're like, I need support with that mindset, but I also could really use help getting clear on what is that plan of strategy or that strategy plan that I can execute on so that I can run at those results, so that I can get fully booked, fill my wait list, sell out my program, have a successful launch, make 6 figures, make $100K a month, whatever that is for you. I would love to connect with you. I will drop a link for a free coaching consultation. I might open up one more spot in October or an intensive, and if not, we're looking at a couple of months, but book in sooner rather than later if you're interested so we can get you into the first spot available. And then I love you all so much. Thank you for celebrating my 11 years in New York with me. I feel like I should go have pizza or something tonight. And I will be back with another conversation for y'all next week. Bye.